Virginia, America's maritime gateway. Imagine a place where American history began, where the world's largest naval complex stands ready every single day, where billions of dollars in global trade pass through modern ports, and where the world's largest data center market quietly helps power the internet. Welcome to Virginia. Located along the Atlantic coast of the United States, Virginia is far more than just another American state. It is one of the birthplaces of modern America, a global maritime gateway, a military powerhouse, and one of the country's most influential economic centers. From the historic streets of Jamestown to the massive container terminals of the Port of Virginia, from the aircraft carriers docked at Naval Station Norfolk to the data centers that help keep the digital world connected, Virginia has shaped the past and continues to influence the future. Today, nearly 9 million people call Virginia home. The state covers approximately 42,800 square miles and shares borders with Maryland, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, and the Atlantic Ocean. Its capital city is Richmond, while Virginia Beach is the largest city by population. Virginia is also known as the Old Dominion, a nickname dating back to the 17th century, reflecting its loyalty to the British Crown before the American Revolution. Yet centuries later, this same land would help shape American independence and become one of the most strategically important states in the nation. But what truly makes Virginia so powerful? Is it its remarkable history, its military strength, its world-class ports, or something even greater? Let's find out. Virginia. Geography and strategic location. But Virginia's real power begins with its location. Look at the map, and the reason becomes clear. Virginia sits on America's east coast, roughly midway between Florida and Maine. To its east lies the Atlantic Ocean. But between Virginia and the open Atlantic is something far more important: the Chesapeake Bay. This massive estuary reaches deep into the state, connecting the Atlantic to a network of rivers, ports, cities, and communities. And Virginia's coastline is anything but ordinary. Its coastal zone contains more than 10,000 miles of tidal shoreline, while four major rivers, the Potomac, Rappahannock, York, and James, reach deep into the Commonwealth. For centuries, these waterways provided something every great civilization and trading center needs: access. Ships could move inland, goods could move outward, communities could grow around the water, and eventually, this geography would help transform Virginia into one of America's most important maritime centers. At the heart of it all is Hampton Roads. Located where the James River meets the Chesapeake Bay, Hampton Roads is one of the great natural harbors of the United States. Its deep and sheltered waters created the perfect environment for commerce, shipbuilding, and naval power. And today, that advantage has become even more important. The Port of Virginia connects the Commonwealth to international shipping routes and to markets across the United States through an extensive network of highways and railways. But Virginia has taken that advantage one step further. In 2026, a major transformation was completed at Norfolk Harbor. The shipping channel was deepened to 55 feet, creating the deepest commercial shipping channel on the entire US East Coast. That means some of the largest container ships in Atlantic trade can now move through Norfolk Harbor with full loads. Think about what that means. A geographic advantage that began with the shape of the coastline has now become a modern infrastructure advantage, connecting ocean trade with the American economy. And this is the secret behind Virginia. Its geography does not simply place it beside the Atlantic. It places Virginia at the intersection of the Atlantic Ocean, the Chesapeake Bay, major rivers, inland transportation networks, and some of America's largest population and economic centers. From these waters, Virginia can reach the world. And from these same waters, the world can reach America. But this strategic location was not discovered by modern shipping companies. More than 4 centuries ago, it helped shape the beginning of English America itself. And that is where Virginia's remarkable story truly begins. Let's find out. Virginia, the story that helped create America. More than 4 centuries ago, Virginia's strategic location attracted people who were looking for something that could change the course of history. In 1607, 3 English ships entered the Chesapeake Bay carrying 104 settlers. They sailed up the James River, and there they established Jamestown. It became the first permanent English settlement in North America. But the story was far from easy. Disease, hunger, conflict, and a harsh environment pushed the settlement to the edge of collapse. During the winter of 1609 and 1610, Jamestown entered what became known as the starving time. Many settlers died, yet the colony survived. And then something happened that would transform Virginia forever. Tobacco. John Rolfe introduced a variety of tobacco that could be successfully cultivated and sold in Europe. The crop became the economic engine of colonial Virginia. But Virginia's history was not simply a story of European settlement. Long before the English arrived, powerful indigenous societies had lived throughout the region. The Powhatan people controlled a large network of communities connected by the rivers and waterways of the Chesapeake. Their relationship with the English settlers would become one of the most complicated and consequential chapters in Virginia's early history. In 1619, another milestone changed the political story of America. Virginia's General Assembly met at Jamestown. It became the first representative legislative assembly in English North America. The idea of representative government would eventually become one of the foundations of the United States. More than a century later, Virginia stood at the center of another revolution. Figures such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Patrick Henry emerged from Virginia's political world. Virginia became a powerful force in the American Revolution, and in 1781, the War for Independence reached its decisive moment at Yorktown. British General Charles Cornwallis surrendered to American and Allied forces. The American Revolution was effectively over. A new nation was born. But Virginia's influence did not end there. 8 US presidents would eventually be born in Virginia, more than any other state. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, and 4 more presidents who followed them. But America's greatest political achievement would eventually collide with one of its deepest contradictions: slavery. Virginia became one of the largest slave-holding states in the country, and the institution became deeply embedded in its economy and society. That conflict eventually helped push the nation towards civil war. When the Civil War began in 1861, Virginia became one of its most important battlegrounds. Richmond became the capital of the Confederacy. Across Virginia, armies fought some of the war's most important battles. And in April 1865, the conflict reached its historic conclusion at Appomattox Courthouse. There, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant. The Civil War was coming to an end. Virginia had once been the birthplace of an English colony. It had helped create the United States. It had produced presidents, revolutionaries, soldiers, and statesmen. And it had witnessed the nation tear itself apart before beginning the long process of rebuilding. Today, the forts, battlefields, historic towns, and rivers of Virginia still carry the evidence of that extraordinary past. But Virginia's story did not end with the Civil War. In fact, the next chapter would transform Virginia from a historic American state into one of the country's most powerful economic centers. And that transformation begins with its people, its cities, and the communities that grew along its rivers and coast. Virginia, its people, culture, and major cities. Today, nearly 9 million people call Virginia home, but that number tells only part of the story. Virginia's population is spread across very different worlds, from the historic capital of Richmond to the coastal cities of Hampton Roads to the rapidly growing communities surrounding Washington, D.C. And each region has helped shape the Virginia we know today. At the center of the Commonwealth is Richmond. Located on the James River, Richmond has served as Virginia's capital since 1780. Its location on the river helped make it an important center of commerce, manufacturing, and transportation. Today, Richmond combines Virginia's historic identity with a growing modern economy, cultural scene, universities, museums, restaurants, and neighborhoods. But travel east, and Virginia begins to look very different. Along the Chesapeake Bay is Hampton Roads, a metropolitan region built around water, commerce, military power, and shipbuilding. Norfolk is at its heart. It is home to Naval Station Norfolk, one of the most important naval installations in the world, while the surrounding region includes Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, and Virginia Beach. And then there is Virginia Beach. With its long Atlantic coastline, beaches, resorts, and tourism industry, it is Virginia's most populous city. But Virginia's population story doesn't end on the coast. Move north toward Washington, D.C., and another Virginia emerges. Northern Virginia has become one of the most densely developed and economically powerful parts of the Commonwealth. Cities and communities such as Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, and Loudoun County sit within one of America's most influential metropolitan regions. Here, government, technology, defense, finance, and international business come together. And this region has attracted people from across the United States and from around the world. That diversity is one of Virginia's defining characteristics. The Commonwealth is home to communities with roots across Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. You can hear different languages, experience different cuisines, and see different cultural traditions within the same state. Yet Virginia also has a strong identity of its own. Its culture reflects centuries of history, from indigenous traditions and colonial settlements to African American heritage, Southern traditions, military communities, and modern immigrant cultures. Music, food, historic landmarks, universities, sports, and festivals all contribute to that identity. And perhaps the most interesting part is how different these communities can feel. A morning in the mountains of Western Virginia can feel completely different from an evening on the Atlantic coast. A historic street in Richmond can feel worlds apart from the technology corridors of Northern Virginia. Yet all of them are connected by the same Commonwealth. And beneath this diversity lies something even more important. Virginia's people have helped build one of America's most diverse and powerful economies. From government and technology in the north, to ports and shipbuilding in Hampton Roads, to finance, education, agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism across the rest of the state. Virginia's cities are not simply places where people live. They are engines that keep the Commonwealth moving. And now that we know the people and places behind Virginia, it's time to ask the bigger question. What makes this state one of the most powerful economies in America? Virginia, the economic engine. So, what makes Virginia one of America's most powerful economies? The answer is not a single industry. It is the combination of government, defense, technology, finance, manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and, at the heart of our story, maritime trade. Virginia's economy is one of the largest in the United States, generating more than $500 billion in economic activity each year. But what makes it unusual is the diversity behind that number. In Northern Virginia, the economy is closely connected to Washington, D.C. Federal agencies, defense contractors, technology companies, consulting firms, financial institutions, and thousands of businesses operate across the region. The US government is one of Virginia's largest economic forces. And this is where another Virginia advantage becomes clear. The state is not simply close to the nation's capital, it is deeply connected to the machinery of the American government. Defense is another major pillar. Virginia hosts major military installations, defense companies, shipyards, and thousands of workers whose industries are connected to national security. From aircraft carriers and naval systems to cybersecurity and advanced technology, defense spending flows through communities across the Commonwealth. Then there is technology. Northern Virginia has become one of the most important technology centers in the world. Around Ashburn, massive data centers process and exchange enormous amounts of digital information every second. This region has become known as one of the world's leading data center markets. And while most people never see these facilities, they help support the digital services that millions of people use every day. But Virginia's economy is not only about computers and government. Agriculture remains an important part of the Commonwealth. Virginia produces tobacco, soybeans, corn, wheat, poultry, dairy products, wine, seafood, and many other agricultural goods. Its forests and coastal waters also support major industries. Tourism adds another layer. Millions of visitors come to Virginia for its beaches, mountains, historic sites, battlefields, wineries, theme parks, and cultural attractions. And then there is manufacturing. Virginia's industrial base includes aerospace, shipbuilding, advanced manufacturing, food processing, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and transportation equipment. But connect all these industries together and one thing becomes obvious. An economy this large needs a way to move. Raw materials have to arrive. Factories need equipment. Businesses need products. And finished goods have to reach customers, not just in Virginia, but across the United States and around the world. That is where Virginia's transportation network becomes critical. Highways connect the Commonwealth to the American interior. Railways move heavy cargo over long distances. Airports connect Virginia to national and international destinations. And along the coast, ships connect Virginia directly to the global economy. This is where Virginia's economic story meets our maritime story. Because behind the millions of dollars generated by Virginia's industries, behind the factories, farms, technology companies, and businesses, there is a gateway moving the physical goods that keep the economy running, the Port of Virginia. And this is where Virginia's role in global trade becomes truly extraordinary. Virginia, ports, maritime trade, and logistics. If Virginia's economy is the engine, then its ports are the gateway that keeps that engine connected to the world. And at the center of this maritime network is the Port of Virginia. But this is not simply one port. It is a network of 6 terminals spread across Hampton Roads and beyond, connected to the Atlantic Ocean, America's rail system, highways, inland terminals, and major consumer markets. Every day, massive container ships arrive carrying goods from around the world. Electronics, machinery, automobiles, food, raw materials, and thousands of products that eventually make their way into American homes, factories, stores, and businesses. But what happens after a container reaches Virginia? This is where the real logistics story begins. At Norfolk International Terminals, one of the port's major facilities, containers can move directly from ship to rail or highway. 2 major Class 1 railroads, Norfolk Southern and CSX, provide double-stack rail connections deep into the American interior. And Virginia's logistics network doesn't stop at the waterfront. The Virginia Inland Port in Front Royal connects ocean cargo to inland markets through daily double-stack rail service. Richmond Marine Terminal adds another connection through the James River and the region's highway network. This means a container arriving from Asia doesn't have to remain at the coast. It can move from ship to terminal to rail to highway and eventually to a distribution center hundreds of miles inland. That is the real meaning of a modern port. It is not just where ships arrive. It is where global trade becomes domestic commerce. And Virginia has invested heavily to make that system even more powerful. In 2026, the Port of Virginia completed a major transformation of Norfolk Harbor. The shipping channel was deepened to 55 feet, making it the deepest commercial shipping channel on the entire US East Coast. The new channel allows the largest cargo ships in Atlantic trade to enter Norfolk Harbor with full loads, while supporting two-way traffic for ultra-large container vessels. And there is another advantage. Virginia's port is positioned close to some of America's largest population and industrial centers. The Port of Virginia says its central East Coast location provides access to 75% of the US population within 2 days or less. That geographic advantage is one reason companies choose to build warehouses, distribution centers, and manufacturing facilities near the port. The economic impact is enormous. Port-related business activity supports more than 570,000 jobs across Virginia and contributes approximately $63 billion to the Commonwealth's gross state product each year. So when a ship arrives in Norfolk, the impact doesn't stop at the dock. It moves through trucking companies, railroads, warehouses, factories, distribution centers, retailers, and communities across the state. This is why the Port of Virginia is more than a maritime facility. It is an economic ecosystem, and Virginia is preparing for even more growth. The port's modernization program is expanding terminal capacity, rail infrastructure, automation, and its ability to handle the next generation of ultra-large container vessels. Because global shipping is changing. Ships are getting larger, supply chains are becoming more complex, and the competition between American ports is becoming more intense. Virginia is positioning itself for that future. But there is another side to Virginia's maritime identity. The same waters that bring containers and commercial ships into Hampton Roads also lead to one of the most powerful concentrations of naval forces on Earth. And that takes us from global commerce to military power. To Virginia, military power and shipbuilding. But Virginia's connection to the ocean is about far more than commerce. Because the same waters that bring the world's largest container ships into Hampton Roads also protect one of the world's most powerful military forces. Welcome to Norfolk. Located at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, Norfolk is home to Naval Station Norfolk, the world's largest naval station. From these waters, US Navy ships can reach the Atlantic and operate across the globe. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and thousands of sailors, officers, engineers, and civilian workers are part of the massive military community surrounding Hampton Roads. But Virginia's naval power does not end at the waterfront. Just across the harbor, another extraordinary story is taking place. In Newport News, ships are being built that are larger, more complex, and more technologically advanced than almost anything humanity has ever put to sea. Newport News Shipbuilding has been building and maintaining ships for more than 140 years. Today, more than 26,000 people work there, making it the largest industrial employer in Virginia. And its mission is unlike almost any other shipyard in the world. Newport News Shipbuilding is the nation's sole designer, builder, and refueler of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. These are not ordinary ships. A modern nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is essentially a floating city, capable of carrying thousands of people, operating for decades, and projecting American air power across the world's oceans. And every one of the US Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carriers currently in service was built at Newport News. The shipyard has already built more than 30 aircraft carriers, including the world's first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, USS Enterprise, and all 10 Nimitz-class carriers. Now the next generation is taking shape. The Gerald R. Ford class. The newest American aircraft carriers use advanced technologies designed to generate more aircraft sorties, provide greater electrical power, and reduce the manpower required to operate these enormous ships. The second Ford-class carrier, John F. Kennedy, recently completed its Builder's Sea trials in 2026, taking another major step toward joining the US Navy fleet. But aircraft carriers are only part of the story. Newport News also works on nuclear-powered submarines, including the Virginia and Columbia classes. These submarines are designed to operate beneath the world's oceans, carrying some of the most sophisticated military technology ever developed. And behind every ship is something even more important: people. Generations of Virginia shipbuilders have passed their skills from one generation to the next. Engineers, welders, electricians, designers, nuclear specialists, software engineers, and thousands of skilled workers whose work can ultimately influence the balance of power far beyond Virginia's coastline. This is what makes Virginia different. Its ports connect America to the global economy. Its shipyards build some of America's most powerful warships, and its naval installations provide the infrastructure to operate them. Commerce and defense exist side by side. A container ship can enter Hampton Roads carrying cargo from across the world, while an aircraft carrier leaves the same waters on a mission thousands of miles away. And behind both movements is the same geographic advantage we saw at the beginning of this story: Virginia's access to the Atlantic. But there is another kind of power developing in Virginia, one that doesn't move across the ocean. It moves through fiber optic cables, computer networks, and data centers. And in Northern Virginia, that digital power has grown into something extraordinary. Virginia. Technology and hidden power. But Virginia's power is not always visible. Some of it moves across the ocean. Some of it travels through highways and railways. And some of it moves at the speed of light. Welcome to Northern Virginia. Around Ashburn and Loudoun County, thousands of servers operate inside massive data centers, processing, storing, and exchanging enormous amounts of digital information every second. This region has become the world's largest data center market. In fact, Northern Virginia represents a remarkable share of the world's data center capacity. And the reason is not accidental. Virginia sits close to Washington, D.C., has an extensive fiber optic network, reliable power infrastructure, available land, and direct access to some of America's largest technology and government customers. Together, these advantages created something far bigger than a technology cluster. They created one of the world's most important pieces of digital infrastructure. Think about what happens every time you send a message, watch a video, store a photograph in the cloud, make an online payment, or access a website. Behind that simple action is a massive network of servers, cables, switches, and data centers. And a significant part of that digital ecosystem is connected to Northern Virginia. The economic impact is enormous. In 2025, Virginia's data center industry generated nearly $40 billion in statewide economic impact and supported more than 112,000 jobs. But technology is only one layer of Virginia's hidden power. Travel west from Ashburn toward McLean, and you enter another world. Hidden among the trees near Washington, D.C., is the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency. Known as the George Bush Center for Intelligence, the CIA's headquarters has been located in Langley, Virginia since the early 1960s. From here, the agency carries out its mission of collecting and analyzing foreign intelligence for the United States government. For security reasons, much of what happens inside remains classified. But its location tells us something important about Virginia. This state sits remarkably close to the center of American political, technological, military, and intelligence power. And that combination is rare. Within a relatively small area, Virginia brings together the Pentagon and major federal agencies. The CIA, defense contractors, technology companies, data centers, universities, and a massive network of military installations. The result is an ecosystem where information, technology, government, and national security constantly interact. And the story is still evolving. Artificial intelligence is increasing demand for computing power. Cloud services continue to expand. Data centers are becoming larger. And companies are investing billions of dollars in the infrastructure required to support the next generation of digital technology. Virginia is no longer simply a place where information passes through. It has become a place where the digital infrastructure of the modern world is built. And that creates a fascinating contrast. On one side of Virginia, massive container ships move physical goods across the Atlantic. On the other, invisible streams of digital information move across fiber optic networks. And between them stands a state that has learned how to turn geography into power. But Virginia's story isn't only about ports, ships, servers, and national security. Beyond the cities and technology corridors lies another Virginia. A Virginia of mountains, forests, beaches, rivers, and historic landscapes. And that is where our journey takes us next. Our journey, Virginia, where history meets nature. But Virginia has another side. A side far removed from container ships, aircraft carriers, and data centers. A side of mountains, forests, rivers, beaches, and historic landscapes. To understand this Virginia, start in the west. The Blue Ridge Mountains stretch across the Commonwealth, creating some of the most spectacular landscapes in the eastern United States. And within these mountains lies Shenandoah National Park. Its Skyline Drive follows the crest of the Blue Ridge for more than 100 miles, offering sweeping views across the Shenandoah Valley and the mountains beyond. In the autumn, the landscape transforms. Forests turn into shades of red, orange, and gold, attracting visitors from across America and around the world. But Virginia's natural beauty doesn't end in the mountains. Travel east, and the landscape changes completely. The Atlantic coastline opens into wide beaches and coastal communities, with Virginia Beach becoming one of the state's best-known destinations. Its long ocean front attracts millions of visitors, while the surrounding waterways connect the city to the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic. Further north, the Chesapeake Bay creates another world of its own. Its waters support fisheries, wildlife, wetlands, and coastal communities that have depended on the bay for generations. And along Virginia's rivers and forests, visitors can discover another important part of the state's identity: its vineyards and wine country. Virginia has developed into one of America's leading wine-producing states, with hundreds of wineries spread across different regions. But perhaps Virginia's greatest attraction is its history. Across the Commonwealth, visitors can walk through places that played a role in the creation of America. Jamestown, Yorktown, colonial Williamsburg, Civil War battlefields, historic homes, presidential sites. These are not simply tourist attractions. They are physical reminders of the events that shaped the United States. And then there is Virginia's outdoor culture. Hiking, kayaking, fishing, camping, cycling, boating, wildlife watching. From the Appalachian Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean, Virginia offers an extraordinary variety of landscapes within one state. That variety is one reason tourism has become an important part of Virginia's economy. But there is something else that makes Virginia unusual. In the same day, a visitor can explore a colonial settlement, drive through the Blue Ridge Mountains, watch the sunset over the Chesapeake Bay, and finish the evening on an Atlantic beach. Few places combine that much history and geography in such a compact part of America. And perhaps that is the best way to understand Virginia. It is not defined by one landscape. It is defined by the contrast between them: mountains and ocean, historic towns and modern cities, quiet forests and busy ports, ancient waterways and cutting-edge technology. And behind all of it is a government responsible for managing one of America's most strategically important states. So who is leading Virginia today? And how is this powerful Commonwealth governed? Let's meet the people responsible for steering it into the future. Virginia, government and leadership. Behind every powerful state is a system of leadership that has to keep everything moving. And in Virginia, that responsibility begins in Richmond. Virginia is officially known as a Commonwealth, and its government is divided among three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. At the center of the executive branch is the governor. As of 2026, Virginia is led by Governor Abigail D. Spanberger. She became Virginia's governor in January 2026, taking responsibility for a Commonwealth that stretches from the Atlantic coast to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and from historic communities to some of America's most advanced technology corridors. The governor oversees the executive branch, helps shape the state budget, appoints key officials, responds to emergencies, and represents Virginia at both the state and national level. But the governor does not govern alone. Virginia's laws are created by the General Assembly, the state's legislature. It consists of two chambers. The House of Delegates has 100 members, and the Senate of Virginia has 40. Together, they debate legislation, approve budgets, and make decisions that affect millions of Virginians. And then there is the local level. Virginia's major cities have their own governments, with elected mayors, councils, and other officials responsible for the communities they serve. In Richmond, the state capital, Dr. Danny Avula became the city's 81st mayor in January 2025. His administration oversees the government of Virginia's historic capital as it works to balance its heritage with the challenges of a growing modern city. Further east, in Virginia Beach, Mayor Robert "Bobby" Dyer leads the Commonwealth's largest city by population. His city sits directly on the Atlantic Ocean and plays an important role in tourism, coastal development, military activity, and the region's broader economy. And this is where Virginia's system of government becomes particularly interesting. The governor deals with the Commonwealth as a whole. The General Assembly creates state law, and local governments manage the communities where people actually live and work. Different levels of leadership, one Commonwealth. And their decisions can influence everything we have seen in this documentary: transportation infrastructure, education, economic development, ports, environmental protection, military communities, technology, and the future of Virginia's coastline. Because Virginia is not standing still. Its leaders are making decisions today that will shape how the Commonwealth competes for investment, manages growth, protects its coastline, supports its industries, and prepares for the next generation. And after more than 4 centuries of transformation, Virginia is still evolving. But before we reach the end of our journey, there are a few remarkable facts about Virginia that reveal just how unusual this state really is. Some of them are well known, others may surprise you. Let's take a closer look. Virginia. Amazing facts. After everything we have seen, Virginia may already seem extraordinary. But some of its most fascinating stories are hidden in the details. Here are a few facts that reveal just how unusual this Commonwealth really is. First, Virginia is known as the Mother of Presidents. 8 US presidents were born here, more than in any other state. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, Zachary Taylor, and Woodrow Wilson. That is a remarkable concentration of American presidential history in one state. But Virginia's influence goes even further. The Commonwealth is also known as the Mother of States. Parts of 8 present-day states were eventually formed from territory once claimed by Virginia. That list includes Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Think about that. Virginia once claimed territory that today stretches across a huge portion of the American Midwest. Now consider this. Virginia's state capital Richmond has been the seat of government since 1780. And its state capital, designed in part by Thomas Jefferson, is the second oldest working state capital in the United States. But Virginia's historic importance isn't limited to politics. In Arlington County, directly across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., stands another extraordinary landmark: the Pentagon. One of the world's most recognizable buildings, it serves as the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. And it was built remarkably quickly. Construction began in 1941 during World War II, and the enormous 5-sided building was completed in roughly 16 months. Then there is Virginia's geography. The state's highest natural point is Mount Rogers, rising to more than 5,700 feet above sea level. Yet Virginia also reaches the Atlantic Ocean. So within one Commonwealth, you can go from mountain landscapes to ocean beaches. And remember Hampton Roads? Its waters are not just a major commercial gateway. They are also home to one of the world's most important concentrations of naval power. Then there is Virginia's digital infrastructure. In Northern Virginia, around Ashburn and Loudoun County, enormous data centers form one of the world's largest concentrations of digital infrastructure. So Virginia has something few places can match. It can move physical cargo across the Atlantic, move military power across the world's oceans, and move enormous amounts of digital information across the planet. And perhaps the most remarkable fact of all is this: Virginia has been reinventing itself for more than 4 centuries. A colonial settlement became the birthplace of presidents. River ports became international gateways. Shipyards became builders of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. And quiet farmland outside Washington became one of the world's most important technology corridors. Virginia's story is therefore not simply about what it was. It is about what it continues to become. And after more than 400 years, the Commonwealth is still changing. But now, it's time to bring the journey together. Because when we look at Virginia as a whole, the picture is much bigger than a single state. It is a story about America itself. Virginia, America's maritime gateway. So, what truly makes Virginia powerful? Perhaps it is the history, the place where Jamestown began a new chapter in North America, Perhaps it is the people. Millions of Virginians building communities, businesses, universities, and industries across the Commonwealth. Perhaps it is the economy, powered by government, defense, technology, manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and global commerce. Or perhaps it is the water. The Atlantic Ocean, the Chesapeake Bay, the rivers, the ports. The same waterways that once carried settlers into a new world now carry some of the largest ships on Earth. At Norfolk Harbor, modern container vessels connect Virginia with markets across the globe. At Newport News, American shipbuilders construct nuclear-powered aircraft carriers that can sail thousands of miles from home. In Northern Virginia, invisible streams of information move through data centers and fiber optic networks, connecting people and businesses around the world. And across the Commonwealth, mountains, forests, beaches, historic towns, and modern cities tell a story that has been unfolding for more than 400 years. Virginia has changed. America has changed. But one thing has remained constant: Virginia's ability to turn its location into opportunity, its waterways into trade, its people into industries, its history into identity, and its strategic position into power. From Jamestown to Yorktown, from Richmond to Norfolk, from the Port of Virginia to the data centers of Northern Virginia. This is not simply a state on the map. It is a place where America's history, economy, military strength, and future meet. This is Virginia, America's maritime gateway. And this is the United States, one state at a time. You have been watching The States of America, a documentary series by the Shippers Media Network, presented by the Shippers USA, connecting people, places, trade, and stories across America and the world. This is the Shippers Media Network, and it's the Shippers USA.